Hey, I'm just going to let you in on a little secret. I'm a massive, massive fan of horror comedies, specifically horror comedies. It's like one of my favorite genres by far, and secretly that's not really a secret because I've said this a bunch of times on this channel before. But today I kind of wanted to honor them and go through some of my favorites. So this is going to be the top 25 horror comedies according to me, just my opinion. It's not based on anything in terms of popularity or the IMDb score or whatever. It's just what I like, all right? So you literally can't disagree because it's just my opinion. Ha! Gotcha, loophole. Alright, but I'm going to start off just by setting some ground rules here, where there are a bunch of movies where, you know, they might come to your mind when you're thinking of horror comedies, but I just want to say that things like Friday the 13th, any of the sequels, or anything like Wrong Turn, or just any sort of those like over-the-top slashes that are funny but not intended to be, I'm not counting here. If they aren't actually intended to be part of the horror comedy genre, but they just kind of accidentally fall into place in being there because they're silly, I'm not counting them. With the exception of one. I do have one in there that I'll get to a bit later that is arguably part of this, but I'm not 100% sure. So I've kept it in here because I love it so much and I just kind of wanted to talk about it. But yeah, if it's anything that's sort of intended to be a horror movie, but it just does it in such a silly way and it just turns out to be kind of more hilarious, I'm not exactly counting it here, if that makes any sense. Okay, and now just before I start off my list, there are also a few where I'm not sure if they really count as horror comedies, even though they're movies I love and would love to put them on the top 25. These include You're Next, which is a fantastic home invasion satire horror movie. That being said, yeah, it's way more of a satirical take on the home invasion genre rather than it is exactly a comedic take, if that makes any sense. And so I'm not really sure it counts. It does feel a bit silly and over the top sometimes, but for the most part, it's a pretty brutal film. I love it, but I'm not sure it counts as a comedy. Then there is Scream, which I think there is a really good argument for it being part of the comedy genre, the horror comedy genre. But it is a pretty straight up slasher, much like the movies that it is kind of, you know, taking, poking a little bit of fun at, but it's not poking enough fun where it's obviously just a straight up comedy where you're laughing all the way through it. For the most part, it really is just a straight slasher movie, I feel like, even if it plays with that genre a little bit, but there's an argument for it to be part of it. Then there is a movie called Spree from 2020 or 2019. It's a fairly recent movie about a guy who wants to be an influencer but is failing to be. He's not quite getting the following online that he wants to get, which relatable. But he is willing to do anything that it takes to get the attention that he so desires. And it starts to take this really dark route about like what the lengths are that he is willing to go to get that notoriety and fame and stuff. Obviously, it gets kind of dark and violent, and it's a very smart movie, and it is funny, and it is really funny. Actually, maybe it should count now that I'm saying it all out loud. But at the moment here, I'm recording, it's too late. I wasn't sure if it exactly counted as a straight up comedy because it also is a pretty dark kind of take on the willingness to, you know, what a scary kind of possible future could be, on what the willingness that young people might take to get fame and all that kind of stuff online, and the influence that is there. It's a great movie. Probably should be in my top 25, but oh well, who cares? Moving on. Next up is a movie with Daniel Radcliffe called Horns. This again is more of it's kind of like an investigation-y kind of movie in a weird way. I don't know. Anyway, this guy gets horns and he isn't quite sure what to do about it. So there is a bit of like, he's kind of accidentally being a monster or whatever, but it's more dark than funny, I think. I haven't watched it in a while. I absolutely love it though. I remember loving it, but yeah, I'm not sure it counts as a comedy. And now, it's just some honourable mentions before I get to the actual list. There is Murder Party, which is a super different movie than I thought it was going to be going in. Quite a strange movie, just this group of people in one room for the most part. And it definitely does escalate in some really silly ways. Then there is Freaks of Nature, which is a pretty fun kind of zombie movie, but there's also vampires in there, and if I'm mistaken, that they get invaded by aliens. there's like a town where it's established that the zombies and the vampires live together and humans, and then they get invaded by aliens. So it's definitely very over the top. It's just not that great though, so it didn't quite crack my 25. It's good, it's worth watching, but it's not like fantastic. Same with Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. I like this movie. It's written by Christopher Landon, a director who will come up again in this list a couple times. I'm absolutely in love with that guy, but this one is probably on the weaker side with his. Then there is The Frighteners starring Michael J. Fox, which I do think is a fairly good movie, and it's fun and kind of lighthearted for some of it, but then a lot of it, by the end, it kind of gets very plot heavy, and it's not exactly as on the funny side as I would want it to be if I'm counting it in my top 25 horror comedies, you know what I mean? Now, that's all for the honourable mentions, the things that don't count and all that shit. Let's get to the list. Okay, now we are finally here. Number 25 is a movie that I watched fairly recently actually, called Bloodfest. This is a movie that is pretty much based on Halloween Horror Nights, if you've ever been there or heard of it, which is this thing that they have in America at certain theme parks and stuff. I think it's exclusively Universal Studios actually. And it's kind of just like a scary carnival thing. You go through like those kind of ghost houses and whatever they're called, those mazes that have people jump out at you in costumes and they scare the shit out of you and stuff. Not a massive fan of these places. I went with my wife a few years ago and I could only do one because I'm a massive wimp. I went through the Saw one, which like was cool, the setting and all that stuff, but oh my god, I don't like people jumping out at me. Anyway, this is based on one of those, pretty much. They go to like this scary festival thing based on like horror movies and stuff, and there's different areas around the park that are like based on different genres of horror, which I really like. This is a fun movie, but it does get pretty silly by the end and everything, and it's not like the greatest thing I've ever seen, but I definitely had a lot of fun with it. It's just my kind of movie. Then number 24 is a really weird one called Idle Hands from the 90s. This stars the guy who is in the first Final Destination. I don't know his name. He's also the guy who's in the Stan music video. Eminem's Stan. Just, there's some trivia for you. And this is about a guy who basically loses his hand to itself, and it starts to, he can't control his hand, and it starts like killing people, his hand. And it's kind of like this weird stoner comedy thing, which isn't exactly my favorite kind of genre, but the horror stuff in there and everything definitely elevates it to being a movie that I do enjoy. Yeah, I don't think it's like the most fantastic thing ever, but I definitely have a lot of fun with this one. I'd recommend watching it if it sounds interesting to you. Then number 23 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Yeah, straight up, after the first one, they decided they couldn't top the classic, and they went a different route entirely with a silly approach. And even with the poster, it's like a take on the Breakfast Club poster and everything. It's not as funny as you might expect. It is still pretty horrifying in some certain ways, I will say. But there are definitely moments in here which are just so over the top that they just had to be on purpose. Like, you know, I hope anyway that they weren't trying to do this in a very serious way. But when you do get down into the whatever they're called, the Chainsaw Massacre family's kind of caves that they've kind of got like a cave system in this movie. Once you get down there, like, it's actually quite horrifying. Like, there's a scene with this guy who has literally been skinned alive, and it's like, wow, that's darker than I thought it would be based on the poster. But yeah, I do respect though that they went for a bit of a sillier approach rather than trying to top the first film. Like, I like that self-awareness. They were aware that they wouldn't be able to, so they just did something way different, which is really cool. Then at number 22 is Warm Bodies, which is a rom-com zombie movie about a zombie who is learning to become human, sort of, and is learning to love. And it's kind of sappy. It's not as strong on the funny side. It's more about the plot and everything, but I do enjoy it quite a lot. It is a bit of a teenagey movie and stuff, but sometimes that's not that bad of a thing, you know, as you'll see with a few other ones on this list. But yeah, it's, again, doesn't crack my top 20, but it's still a very good movie, if you ask me. Then at number 21 is The Dead Don't Die. This movie is fucking weird as hell. Like, there is not really any structure to it. You don't really know where it's gonna go, and it's not laugh out loud funny. And it's not even, this movie's so weird. It just like, I don't know. They just like did whatever the fuck they wanted to do with this movie. Some parts are laugh out loud funny. Other parts are just kind of slow and they drag a bit. But then like there's this thing where they do these repetitive kind of moments where like, I don't know, some of the characters will just say the same thing over and over again that they've said throughout the movie, where they're like, particularly when it comes to Bill Murray and Adam Driver in this movie, where they're just going about their day with all these zombies around and they're not really reacting to it properly. Like they're just super nonchalant about it. They're like, I don't know, they just seem bored by it. And I think it's kind of a satirical take on the zombie genre overall, where it's like, yeah, we've seen this all before and everything, but I don't know. It's a strange movie, but I really weirdly enjoyed it. And the poster is fucking sick. Look at that poster. Then next up, number 20, top 20. Here we go. Next up is Zombieland. Now, Zombieland is not my favorite film, okay? But it is sort of special to me because I really enjoyed it when it came out in 2009. I would have been 13, so that's pretty prime, you know, target audience right there. Like, this was kind of for me. And I even studied it in high school. Like, we watched this movie in media class and kind of learnt about some of the things about it. I don't remember exactly what we learnt in it. It's kind of a weird choice, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of been there. You know, it's one of those movies that has been in my life, I guess, for a while, and I like it. It's kind of a classic. Then at number 19 is this weird Australian movie called Little Monsters. This is also a zombie movie, and it's about these people who go to like one of those petting zoo farm places with, it's about teachers who take these like little kindergarteners or whatever. Like, I don't know if they're old enough to be in primary school or whatever. Little kids, they take them to this farm thing, but then everything goes wrong and there's all these zombies there and everything. And it's basically about Lupita Nyong'o's character pretending that nothing wrong is going on to the children. Like, she's trying to sing to them and pretend like everything's fine while all this chaos is going around like behind her and everything. And it's just kind of silly in that way, but I do enjoy it quite a lot. And what's his name? Gat. Something Gat. The dude that voices the snowman guy from Frozen. Josh Gad? That's his name, right? Yeah. He plays this ridiculously over-the-top and disgusting, just vile character, but he does it so well, and he really is a highlight to this movie, if you ask me. Then number 18 is Cooties. This one has Lee Whannell's name written all over it, and he actually appears in it for a little bit as well. It's kind of similar to Little Monsters as well. This one stars, what's his name? Frodo. The Frodo guy. Oh no! How did I forget his name? Elijah Wood. I did not remember it. I had to look it up. This one stars Elijah Wood. And again, it's about teachers and zombie children, and they just have to kill all the zombie children as they are trapped in their school. So yeah, it's about as silly as it sounds, but it's kind of awesome. Then number 17 is Sightseers. This is a very slow-paced, strange film that is set in England somewhere, possibly maybe Ireland or something, somewhere like that. And it is about these people who are newly dating, and they're kind of, you know, it's kind of like this weird romance thing that's supposed to be set as like this really realistic thing where they're not that great at it. They're just like normal people and they're going on a trip and everything. It's their first trip together and like everything seems kind of quirky but very slow and normal. They're boring people is basically what I'm trying to say. Like, it's a very good take on these normal boring people, but they actually have this kind of secret, at least the guy does, where he has this desire to kill people. Secretly, he has been a serial killer all along, and along their trip he is killing people, and the woman becomes aware of this and she kind of gets in on it as well, and they kind of become like this Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing, except way more like serial killers than robbers or whatever. And it's just like this really weird slow-paced quirky comedy where they just go around killing people, but they also seem really bored by it. Like, it's really weird. And I enjoy it a lot. I watched this on Shudder, the streaming service. If it's still on there, I would recommend it if that sounds interesting to you. Then next up at 16, this one I argued about with myself whether or not it should be included, because I don't know if it's a straight up comedy or not, but it's Ready or Not. I think it is just silly enough and over the top enough that it can definitely be called a comedy. And so yeah, it's here. This is about a woman who is getting married, and it turns out that the husband's family has this tradition where they have to play a game. Now, by chance, the game is only going to be like, I don't know, Yahtzee or some shit. It's going to be some normal game. But if if she pulls out, I don't know, is it a card or something? She pulls out something. If she happens to get the one bad one, which is this game of hide and seek, basically there is no option for the family but to kill her because they are plagued from like some demon curse or whatever the fuck. And then the rest of the movie is this hide and seek kind of bloody game and whatever around this mansion. And it's just fucking sick. It's so damn good. And Samara Weaving turns into like this badass in the wedding dress and everything, and she gets a shotgun and whatever, and it's just like, yes, this is cool as hell, and I love it. Then number 15 is, I've just lumped them all together, it's the later Elm Street films. All just from like, I guess maybe 3 onwards, maybe 4 onwards, arguably, because 3 is the best one. Maybe that's, it's kind of serious, I guess, but they're all, look, to be honest, they're all pretty silly. But yeah, once we get to at least like 5 and shit like that, like things are just off the walls, you know. Once you get to the ones where it's got the video game scene in there and all that kind of stuff, like the Elm Street series definitely became a horror comedy series, at least down the line. And they're definitely worthy of being on a list like this. I love the Elm Street series so much, which you would know if you saw my Freddy versus Jason video that I put up at the end of 2019. I'll link it because I think personally it's one of my very best videos. There was a lot of passion in it and I love it. Just, there's a little pitch for you right in the middle of this video. Go watch that if that sounds interesting to you, because yeah, Elm Street, oh, it's my baby. I love it so much. Then number 14 is Evil Dead 2. I guess I could lump in the original with it as well, though that's meant to be taken a bit more seriously, even if it is over the top. And there is also Army of Darkness, which I do think is fun, but Evil Dead 2 is really the classic. That's the one everybody loves, you know what I mean? This one is just, oh man, they just got creative with this one. Sam Raimi did whatever the fuck he wanted with this movie, and the creativity just shines. I fucking love Evil Dead 2. Then number 13 is The Final Girls. This is about a girl who gets trapped in a slasher movie, basically. And it's kind of got this emotional pull on it as well because her mum acted in the film. And so when she meets the character that her mum played, and it looks like her mum, there's kind of this nice thing that you know, there's the feels. It makes you feel a little bit. But it's kind of interesting. I just like how it plays with the different dimension and the codes and conventions of the horror genre. Just by the way, I said codes and conventions just then because I remembered that that's what we studied in Zombieland in high school. The codes and conventions of genres. That's what we learned. Anyway, next up is number 12, and this is The Voices starring Ryan Reynolds, which is a very, honestly, like, as much as it's marketed to be a comedy, and maybe I shouldn't include it because of this, it's not as funny as you might expect. It's way more of a tragedy, actually. You feel for this guy. He's a sympathetic character, even though he's a straight up fucking monster. The character that Ryan Reynolds plays here. He hears voices in his head, and, you know, they make him kill people and all that stuff. You know, arguably, depending on how that works, if you're a killer and whatever. But there's something really tragic about this movie where he doesn't exactly want to be doing it, but, you know, clearly there's a part of him that does. And you don't want him to kill some of the people that he meets in this movie. You don't want him, you want him to get better. It's fantastic. But it is also silly. Like, there is a scene where somebody that he has killed, he's decapitated them, and their head is just in the fridge because that's where he leaves them. And the head gives him shit and talks to him and stuff because he's imagining things and everything. Also, something that I love about this movie is that because it's all from his perspective, we see all of these romanticized versions of everything that's going on, like the people he meets and their relationships, and as well as his own, like, surroundings and all that stuff. Like, his house in his mind is this clean, sleek apartment and everything's nice and stuff, but then you see it from outside of his perspective for a second and it's disgusting and there's maggots everywhere and mold and shit because he doesn't look after it. He's not stable. It's very creative and very well done. Then at number 11 is The Babysitter from that's on Netflix. This is about a kid who finds out that his babysitter is like part of this satanic cult, and they find out that he's found out, and they try and kill him for the rest of the movie basically. And it's kind of like this weird sort of Home Alone-y type movie, I guess, because it's all set in his own house and he's just trying to escape from them killers. It gets very over the top. Some very violent situations occur, and it's great. Okay, now number 10. This is the top 10 horror comedies. Okay, here we go. So number 10 is Child's Play from 2019. Arguably, maybe this isn't intended to be funny, and it's meant to be scary, but I don't think so. I think this is definitely meant to be pretty over the top and silly, especially when it comes to kind of the AI taking over and everything. It's meant to be like, I think it's more meant to be a satirical take on like what people think AI and stuff will lead to, like, the robots are gonna get us and whatever. I don't know. I think this movie is really, really well done. And I think it's kind of like, I really like the main character, the kid who's just there. Like, he thinks it's too cool for the Chucky doll and everything at first, but it kind of grows on him and all this stuff. I find it kind of retroactively relatable. Like, I feel like this kid was me a little bit, and there's something there that feels kind of cool. Like, oh yeah, like I get who you are, kid. That, like, good on you or whatever. But I don't know. I like this movie a lot. It gets pretty brutal for some of the scenes, but it's mainly pretty silly. I really like the scene where he gets, I don't remember who, it's like an old lady or something, stuck in a car because the Chucky AI can control other machines and all this kind of stuff. And then by the end of it, when they're in the kind of giant shopping center thing, it's just really cool. And then number 9 is Life After Beth, which again is another kind of rom-com-y kind of horror genre thing. I think it's really good. Oh no, honourable mention, because it's going to fuck up my list if I add it in now. I just remembered another one that is kind of a horror comedy, rom-com-y type of thing. Fido. Fido is a fantastic zombie movie that does things very creatively. It's a fresh take on the genre, which is a thing I normally hate when people say that, especially when it comes to zombies, because it feels like every fucking zombie movie is a fresh take on the genre. Blah, blah, blah. But this one is, and it's good. Okay, now that we're out of that interruption, number 8 is the controversial one where I'm not sure if it really counts as an intended comedy or not. I don't know. You tell me. But it's Wishmaster. Wishmaster is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, but it's also actually legitimately pretty good. The first one actually is alright. Like, the practical effects are actually quite impressive, and it's a really kind of weirdly fun adventure that it takes you on. I like this movie quite a lot. This is about an evil djinn or genie, which basically gives people wishes, and then when they do wish things, they go in like these dark turns. It's basically a version of the monkey paw episode from The Simpsons where your wishes go wrong. And yeah, things just get really silly. Like, they'll be like, I wish it wasn't so cold in here. And then it's like, wish granted. And he sets them on fire or some shit. That's not a real example. I just came up with that on the spot. But yeah, that's the kind of thing you'd expect in this movie. And it's fantastic. All the sequels though, complete shit. Okay, number 2 is kind of fun. It's got some things that I like, but it's considerably worse than the first. And then yeah, just don't bother after that. Probably don't even bother with 2. Then number 7 is Detention. This has Josh Hutcherson, that's his name, right? The dude from the Hunger Games. And it is basically, I don't know how to explain this one. This one's so fast paced and over the top and crazy, and you got to keep up with it. Like, you got to pay attention if you want to keep up with it. Time travel is involved. And that's all I'm going to say from there. But it's a slasher with time travel, and I fucking love this movie so much. Then number 6 is Freaky. This is the one that has Vince Vaughn in it as he swaps bodies with a teenage girl. It's basically Freaky Friday the 13th. Literally, that was a working title for it. Mostly this is just Vince Vaughn running around trying to not get killed by the teenage serial killer coming after him, as his conscious is that teenage girl. And so Vince Vaughn does a lot of acting like a girl, and it's kind of funny and stuff, but not in like a way where it's like, ha ha ha, he's a girl, and that's like, not in an offensive way, just in like, that's clearly not that person's personality, and it just comes off as silly. But a bunch of scenes in this movie, 2 scenes in particular anyway, actually managed to be pretty heartfelt as well. There is a considerably good amount of character work in this movie, weirdly, which you might not expect going in, but it really makes you actually feel for the characters, and that is something that I really appreciate as well. This is good movie outright. Like, apart from just being a fun horror comedy type of thing, this is actually a legitimately good movie. It's really great. It's exactly, if I had to explain my taste in film, Freaky is a pretty damn good example of something that I really like. Then number 5 is Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods is the classic example when it comes to horror comedies, right? Now, again, maybe it's more of a satirical take than a comedic take, again, like some of the others that I've said. I just feel like this is such a classic example of what horror comedies are capable of, and so I really wanted it to be in my top 5. I think that this is one of the most inventive films to have ever existed, to be honest, and that's still like 10 years later. I still think that that's the case. Definitely is a fun take on the genres and everything, the subgenres of horror, I mean, and it's, yeah, it goes in some very cool and bizarre ways that really satisfies me. I don't know, I really enjoy this. And kind of the twist when it comes, like, because you don't know what this movie is exactly about going in. That's the beauty of this movie as well, but the thing that makes it hard to recommend, because you don't want to tell anybody the secrets, you know? You don't want to tell them what the greatness is when it comes to this movie. But if you only tell them that it's just a horror movie and it's just whatever, like, that doesn't sound that enticing. So it was definitely a hard movie to market, I imagine. And yeah, because you don't want to give it away, but also you kind of have to give it away for it to sound interesting. Either way, fantastic film. Then number 4, and this arguably could be number 1, to be honest, because it's such a classic, but it's obviously, it's probably the most obvious example of a horror comedy. It's Shaun of the Dead. Come on. Shaun of the Dead is an absolute classic. I've spoken about it on my channel quite a few times before about how much I love it. Very close to my heart. Edgar Wright is a fantastic director. I love him so much, and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and everything. This is a classic. I could probably recite this whole movie in my mind, to be honest, or just out loud. Should I do that? The music in this movie, which is not something that I usually remember, but like the music is just something that I remember from this movie, in particular the main theme that happens during the title sequence, and Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. That's how I know that song. Shaun of the Dead is the reason I know that song at all. Shaun of the Dead is so good. Then number 3 is Braindead / Dead Alive. I don't know what it's called here. I don't know what it's called in America, but it's swapped, whichever one it is. I think we call it Braindead, they call it Dead Alive. This is the most bizarre movie you might ever see, possibly. It's so damn wacky, and it's very, very, very bloody, but I wouldn't call it violent. Does that make any sense? No, that's not true. It is violent, but it's just so over the top, and it's not trying to be horrific. It's just trying to be excessive. This is about basically a zombie virus that's going around, but it's really just about this guy trying to manage his life around a woman that he's trying to be in a relationship with, and his mean mother who he lives with at home still. And then she catches the zombie virus. He kind of locks her away, pretends nothing's wrong. Then she starts kind of collecting some more people, like, I don't know, the postman or some shit. That's a made up example, but like a few other people that visit the house. And then he's keeping zombies in his house secretly. Which is just, I don't know why he does it. Oh, there's so much fucking insanity in this movie. And then by the end, it's just a bloodbath. Just, oh my God. This movie is absolutely astonishing. If horror comedy is your type of thing and you haven't seen it, Jesus Christ, see it. I only watched it for the first time last year. I absolutely fell in love with it. It is so charming. It's got this like low budget, which you can see on the screen, you know, like it's clearly just a passion project from Peter Jackson, who was a new filmmaker at the time. I think this was his second film, but yeah, like they just had so much fun clearly making this film, and I really appreciate that about it. Then number 2 is Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. I kind of lump them in together because they're similar, although maybe they're not as similar as I'm saying, because the second one does get more actiony, more sci-fi. It's a bit different. While the first one is more of a slasher movie, the second one it deviates a little bit from that, but still. This one is written and directed by Christopher Landon, who is somebody who I love. I just want him to make 1,000 more movies because he somehow knows exactly what I want. I didn't mention it before. He also directed Freaky. Happy Death Day is something that I love to my very core. I just want everybody to watch it and love it as much as I do because it is so good. It is about a girl who basically gets trapped in like one of those loops where it's a Groundhog Day thing where she experiences the same day every day, but she keeps continuously getting killed by like a slasher serial killer kind of thing, and then she just wakes up the next day. But it's so crazy, kind of the extents that she goes to try and get out of it, where she kills herself, but it's so light-hearted in a way as well. And she tries to, mainly the movie is about her investigating, trying to find out who the masked killer is. And it's kind of like a fun mystery in there as well. It's definitely very, very funny. It's definitely a horror movie because there's like, you know, the masked killer and everything going around. Though it's not that violent. It's only rated M here in Australia, which I think maybe is PG-13 for you Americanos. It might be rated R though. I don't know. Haven't looked that up, but it's only M here, which is quite low for a horror movie. But it doesn't need to be more violent. It's perfect as it is. And oh man, Happy Death Day is just goddamn pleasant. It's just delightful. I love it so, so much. Then number 1, this is my favorite horror comedy movie of all time. And it was right there the whole time. It's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. How can it not be? If you like horror comedies, Tucker and Dale versus Evil is the one. There's nothing else like it. Nothing else could possibly top it, I don't think. This is about these two bumbling fools who accidentally continuously get mistaken for being serial killers, like the kind of hillbilly type killers that you'll see in a Rob Zombie movie or whatever. But really, secretly, they're just nice guys trying to help everyone around them, but things keep going wrong, and misunderstandings keep happening where they look bad, and they don't even realize that they look bad, and it's so funny. It's just so good. They become like these accidental, notorious serial killers and whatever. And it's ingenious. It really is ingenious. Like, it seems dumb, but like, you need to really just think about the inventiveness when it comes to it. Like, I don't know how they even came up with some of the scenarios that happen in this movie. It's so good. It is absolutely ingenious. If you haven't seen it, if you like horror in the slightest, if you're kind of familiar in the slightest with the genre, I really think pretty much everybody would appreciate it. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's just my taste, my weird kind of taste and whatever, but Tucker and Dale versus Evil is just so good. Evil just messed with the wrong hillbillies, as the tagline says. That's not that great a tagline, to be honest. It could be better. And that is all. Thank you for watching this. Let me know what your favorite horror comedies are. This is a genre that I am absolutely in love with. It is so special to me. I want to seek them all out. I want to watch them all someday. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's like kind of an obscure enough genre that there aren't a lot of people talking about it. I feel like it's an underrated subgenre as a whole. And there's just something about it that really, really appeals to me because it's got the horror kind of kills in there and stuff. It feels a little bit underground in a way, sort of like it's, you know, it's a little bit more obscure, but it's also lighthearted a lot of the time and just very, very fun. You just have a good time watching these. Like, they don't take themselves too seriously, and yeah, I don't know. There's something about these movies that I just love the goofiness of this genre. It really suits my taste. And that's all. I'm done talking. Thank you for watching, and do the things that all the YouTubers tell you to do every time you watch a video, which is like and comment and share, and also subscribe. Thanks for watching. Catch me next time.